Hello guys, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Deni Lesmana with student number 1922094. I'm class before 19. Tonight, I will present the results of the analysis of the interpreting video from my group, namely regarding decoding, encoding, perception, and expressing process. In the first slide, we can see is decoding process. The decoding procedure follows is in an almost indescribable instance, during which the interpreter processes the information stored in the perceptual auditory storage and extracts necessary information from both linguistic and non-linguistic codes. It is where the message is born. In this procedure, factors that will influence the quality of the interpretation include the source, particularly the speaker, the interpreter's language competence, and his speaker knowledge, which includes the knowledge of the world and knowledge of the subject under discussion. Okay guys, this is part when the decoding process. This picture is an example of decoding process. As you can see from the first picture to the third, the interpreter show that we has processing speaker English to Chinese in his perceptual auditory storage and extracting it to his note. And the second is encoding process. The process includes the activation of the target language that found in long-term memory, syntactic, semantic, word processing, and word steering. Encoding process need mastered all various kind of translation and intended receptor. And this part is encoding process. This moment, interpreter really on his note. It proves that interpreter really have excellent note-taking skills. On this part, President Obama's speech about the relationship, economic, bilateral, conflict areas, and mutual interest between United States and China. The interpreter can interpret the message smoothly and calm. This proves that he can control the situation and master the target language. And in this moment, despite the speaker takes a long time to deliver the message, interpreter could manage to interpret the message in short amount of time. It proves that he has long-term memory, or he stored the message in long-term memory storage. In this moment, President Obama stated that because China and United States is unit, this makes the power of economic is expanding, and the power will be great pressure and responsibilities for both of the countries. So both of the countries should be work together to ensure both economic and human rights. And the next one is perception. In the interpretation stage of perception, we attach meaning to stimuli. Each stimulus or group of stimuli can be interpreted in many different ways. Interpretation refers to the process by which we represent and understand stimuli that affect us. Our interpretations are subjective and based on personal factors. Perceptual constancy is the tendency to see familiar objects as having standard shape, size, color, or location, regardless or changes in the angle of perspective, distance, or lighting. The impression tends to conform to the object as it is assumed to be rather than to the actual stimulus presented to the eye. Perceptual constancy is responsible for the ability to identify objects under various conditions by taking this condition into account during mental reconstitution of the image. Slide still perception. Perception have two parts. The first is visual perception constancies, and the second auditory perceptual constancies. Of visual perception constancies, there are many common visual and perceptual constancies that we experience during the perception process. And the second, auditory perceptual constancies. Our eyes aren't the only sensory organs that trick us into perceptual constancy. Our ears to the job as well. In music, we can identify a guitar as a guitar throughout a song, even when its tremble, pitch, loudness, or environment change. In speech perception, vowels and consonants are perceived as constant even if they sound very different due to the speaker's age, sex, or dialect. This part is perception process. The translators reads the result of the translation without looking at the text, pronounces it by looking at the client. The last is expressing process. The process of expression is the way the translator expresses his language through his or her body language style, such as moving his hand to help him process the translation. And in this part is expressing process. In this section, the interpreter used several gestures to express his language style to the speaker, such as swinging his hand, and also using visual expression and some gesture such as nodding his head as a sign the interpreter has translated the part until the speaker stops.
Well, I want to welcome
until 22 seconds. This is the interpreter use decoding process because interpreter show the ways how processing speaker English to Chinese in his perceptual auditory storage and extracting it to his notes. 1:14 until 1:36 seconds. This moment interpreter really on his note is purpose that interpreter really have excellent note-taking skills. At 1:25 seconds, the interpreter use expressing process because the interpreter use several gestures to express his language style to the speaker, such as swinging his hand. 7 until 2:27 seconds. This use encoding process because the interpreter can interpret the message smoothly and calm. This proves that he can control the situation and master the target language. At 5:10 until 6:30 seconds, this use the encoding process because the speaker takes a long time to deliver the message. Interpreter could manage to interpret the message in short amount of time. It proves that he has long-term memory or he stored the message in long-term memory storage. At 6:40, the interpreter used the expressing process because the interpreter used several gestures to express his language style to the speaker, such as swing his hand. At 8:27 until 8:32, the interpreter used the perception process because the interpreter reads the results of the translation without looking at the text, pronounce it by looking at the client. At 8:35 until 8:43, the interpreter used the perception audio process because the interpreter reads the result of the translation by reading the text, not looking at the client. Okay guys, that's enough from me. Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I have any mistakes on this video. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.